Welcome to the digital airways of Storyophonic, an ongoing conversation series presenting the people, personalities, and perspectives of the modern music business. I'm Dan Kimbell. With our fourth season, we continue to introduce you to those in the spotlight and behind the scenes, and all of our Storyophonic subjects are right here with us in person. It is our objective to entertain and inform you as we reveal tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. Film composers are storytellers whose magical contributions underscore, amplify, and illustrate the images on the screen. For over 20 years, Emmy-nominated composer Miriam Cutler has beaten the odds to make a successful career as a film composer in Hollywood. And she's managed to do so working only on socially relevant Emmy-winning, Sundance and Oscar-nominated documentaries, including RBG, a film about Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsberg. Six-time Grammy-winning composer, trumpeter, and recording artist Terence Blanchard is a national treasure. After composing over 40 film scores, he received his first Academy Award nomination for Spike Lee's BlackKkKlansman. Two celebrated composers exemplify very positive changes within the community of film composition, and it's our honor to present them to you in this special Storyophonic episode. Hi, Miriam.
Good morning.
Great to have you out here with us.
It's really fun to be here.
You're a busy person.
I am.
And so it's taken a second to get you here, but now that you're here, you will be ours.
Happy to.
Yes. And we should let our listeners know, if they don't already know, your area of specialization in this moment is you are the preeminent composer for documentary films.
People always think that, but there's an awful lot of other people doing this stuff. I find that working in documentary films is a passion for me. I have two areas of my life that are really important to me. One is I was an activist and social justice person, and then music, which has been chasing me in my whole life. I've tried to get away, but I couldn't. So I find that in documentary films, I'm able to put the two parts of myself together. So I can work on things that I totally believe in, I really care about, and I'm passionate about, and I love the filmmakers, and we share values, and then I get to write music for that stuff, so which is kind of who I am. So.
We think of a personality like Ruth Bader Ginsberg.
Oh, yeah.
Paraphrasing here, but her thing was about equality was, get your foot off of our necks, and really has taken some incredible stances on social justice.
She was an unabashed, unapologetic feminist from early on, which is really interesting because especially in the 50s and 60s, it was not something people said out loud. I mean, it wasn't in the 70s, it started becoming, we had the second wave, and it was, kind of a movement was setting out with young women. But Ruth Bader Ginsberg was a pioneer, in the sense that it wasn't easy to be an outspoken feminist in those days. She was on the Harvard Law Review. She graduated in the top 5 of her class from Columbia, and she couldn't get hired by anyone in New York City. I mean, that's the way it's been for women. So
in giving a musical voice to that dynamic, what were some of the parameters that you were?
It's really interesting. I've been thinking about this stuff. I have an instinct, really. I think it comes from my days as a performer where you do music in front of an audience and you experience their feedback immediately. For me, Ruth Bader Ginsberg is at such a high level. I have so much respect for her. She's such a dignified person and such an icon. And she loves opera. And so there was opera in the film, but she also has a sense of humor. There's a little bit of hip hop because, notorious RBG. And so I had to sort of find a way to bridge those two. So I felt like I wanted to do something quite dignified, but small, intimate, and really reflect my respect for her. I think that's the best way to put it. A respectful score that does her justice in the sense that doesn't overpower the story, really serves the salient points and really just works with the story arc of the film and never gets out in front of it. I think that's very important in documentaries. Unless there's music-driven moments, it's really important that we serve the story. It's something that I've really learned over the years. When you're making records or writing songs or writing pieces of music to be performed, it's all about you and the music. But when you're working in a documentary situation, it's really about the storytelling. And there's many times I've experienced where I wrote something and I thought to myself, I'm amazing. And then, of course, it gets tossed because I wasn't focusing. My focus left the story, and it became about the music. And so I think it's really important to understand my role as a storyteller and supporting the vision of the filmmakers and never getting out in front of the subjects of the film. So anyway, that's one of the things I love about it, too, is about working in documentaries, is that it's challenging. It's not just obvious,
It's interesting to think of what the role the music plays, which is different than a narrative film. In some ways, I mean, it's still storytelling, but there are also editorial decisions that are made.
Oh, absolutely.
And that I think is really interesting.
The moment you put music on a piece of film to an image, you're editorializing. I mean, editorializing, people think documentary films are supposed to be total reality. I mean, the minute you point the camera, what you choose to shoot, the story you choose to tell. One major difference about documentaries as opposed to fiction films is that oftentimes they start out making a film and they think they know what their story is. They go out to shoot it. And when you're sitting in the editing room, it's not the story you have. So there's a certain challenge and a need for flexibility, and that follows through all the way through post-production. So the first cut of the film may be something, and I start writing music for it, and by the time we get to the end, it could be a very different story that we're telling. So in working in documentaries, there's a very collaborative process, at least for me. That's the thing I enjoy the most, is really working with the filmmakers through the whole process where the music becomes very organic. And that's what I really love.
Looking forward to Love Gilda. We heard very good things about it from Tribeca.
If you had any interest in Saturday Night Live or Gilda Radner, there's a lot of stuff in there that's first time available to people, because the filmmaker, she was able to connect with Gilda Radner's brother. He opened up a garage full of archival stuff that was just mind-boggling. So, like on that film, the filmmakers were counting on me to help keep it from becoming sad. Because, it's really sad. If you love Gilda Radner, it's like a tragedy that she died so young. But the fact is, they wanted to celebrate her life. So oftentimes when I'm working with filmmakers, they'll tell me, what they're hoping I can help them do. Because if we look at that one piece of footage, one of the workshops I present when I go around to, and work with younger composers or even filmmakers is I just show them the same footage with a lot of different cues. And you'd be amazed how I could have 15 different approaches and they all work, but they all tell a different story. And so what has to happen is filmmakers have to learn to understand the power of music and that they have to find the right approach for the story they're telling. And composers need to be aware that there's no one way. We just keep exploring until it starts to feel right.
I read a quote from you, and I'm paraphrasing the quote, but it's something like you said, if you're a creative person, you'll find the outlets.
Yeah. I've been looking for something all my life. And I've always been happy to try stuff. Okay, well, I mean, I literally stumble into things, and I think it's because I'm creative and open. And so when something comes in front of me and it looks interesting, I just go, oh, okay, I'll try that. And then I sort of realize, oh, I can do that.
Recently, you were honored with the BMI Champion Award.
Yeah, myself, Lolita Ritmanis, and Laura Cartman.
How great is that?
It's pretty amazing when you think of just last year even. The representation of women composers in the mainstream industry is the lowest of any profession. I think it was 1.47 of theatrically released films. I read a quote, a woman has more chance of getting a job as a coal miner than as a director of films.
Yeah.
And so we're the lowest in our industry. So the more I've been out, on panels and interviews and things like that, every single time, what's it like to be a woman composer? And it used to really tick me off, and my colleagues also, we're like, would you ask Danny Elfman or Alan Silvestri what it's like to be a man composer? I don't think so. What would John Williams say? So at first we was just annoyed. But after a while, I just thought, they're going to ask me, so I want to have something interesting to say. I was in Spain at this music festival, and Doreen Ringer-Ross was there. She put a panel together with me and Rachel Portman and Beth Krakauer, who's a PR person. It was called Women Composer or something. I don't remember what it's called. Now, Rachel, I don't think she was too happy about being put on the panel. I can't speak for her, but she's one of the very few who have succeeded at a high level in Hollywood. It was very interesting, though. During our conversations, there was tremendous interest in the audience. I mean, we had a very full house of men and women because people were starting to really notice, wow, where are the women, And so Doreen asked some really interesting questions, and then Doreen and I had dinner afterwards, and we're talking about it, and we decided to sort of, let's have a luncheon or something and bring some other women together. And then I started talking to Laura Cartman, and we were like, yeah, this is really, let's be more proactive, And so first we had a cocktail party, and we were really surprised how many people were there. There were a lot of working women. And so we're like, why doesn't anybody know? I didn't even know you existed, And so that was the beginning. A bunch of us started talking. Then she had a smaller luncheon, and we actually told stories about, for instance, I'm working with this male director. This was very early in my career. And he wanted me to go to this party with him, and I did. And he introduced me as his girlfriend. And I'm like, wow, what is that? Excuse me? And he was married, I'm like, why are you introducing me as your girlfriend? Does that ever happen to John Williams? Literally everybody had a story like that. Laura was very proactive. She had a lot of strong ideas about what to do. And so we decided to launch this alliance. And we put together a board of directors. And we had a few meetings. But what really got it going was we decided to have a concert, an orchestral concert, and have our music played. We picked 20 composers. And we did this concert, I guess it was about 2 years ago. There's a lot of powerful people involved in our board who knew people. And it's kind of like there was this seed change happening that, like, right around that time, I think, was when the Hollywood industry started getting shamed publicly more in articles and what's going on with this, and these studies were coming out. Nobody had counted women composers, but they were working with directors and other above the line and below the line female personnel in film. And so Laura got them to include women composers, and it was startling. Once you have numbers like that, you're not feeling like you're whining. We just wanted to be considered for our music and our work. But once you have these numbers, it's like the numbers don't have an opinion. They just are. So we're just presenting the numbers now. We're not whining or complaining or saying we need special treatment. We're just saying, whoa, look at this. And everybody's going, whoa, look at that. That's nasty. And so a lot of support started just kind of emanating. And so we really got, after we did the concert, we got tons of press. Then we have a situation where people in the industry are looking for a way to look like they're doing something about it. So we're the organization. So now we have all these people that want to support our organization, and we're moving forward. It was like a real kind of zeitgeist thing, It just kind of a perfect storm. And so there's been so much progress made over the last couple of years in terms of identifying what the issues are, which are not that there aren't very many women composers aspiring to work. It's that they're somewhat equal in when they're coming out of these film scoring programs, but they're not getting through the gatekeepers. And so why is that? Well, a lot of what we heard was, I don't know any women composers. So we have an online directory of women composers that, if you go to the Alliance website, Alliance for Women Film Composers, you'll see any woman can put herself up there and list her website and her credits. And there you go. You got a whole there's some 200 or 300 people at all levels, beginners, very experienced, a full range. The organization's about 2.5 to 3 years old now. And the young women are so enthusiastic, and they've really embraced it. We have all kinds of things like activities, seminars, and concerts, and opportunities, and internships at studios. And there's so much going on now, and it's being run by people who are extremely energetic. They're very, very ambitious about how to use it. So it's very exciting. Another interesting thing, years and years of going to BMI Awards dinners and very few women on the stage.
Yes.
Because the BMI Awards are given out for the highest grossing of their category. So it becomes very clear how few women are working on the shows that are the highest grossing. And once again, we have the answer now to why that is. It's not because we aren't good enough. It's because we can't get that opportunity to even compete for the gig. What a difference the last 2 years. The year before last, a bunch of us were sitting there going, it's depressing, to go to the awards anymore. It's just the same people year after year, or new people with the same look. And so last year, BMI decided to acknowledge us from the stage and ask us all to rise. And so we got a clap, which was kind of embarrassing, but it had to happen. Something happened. This year, they really went all out, and they decided to make it a real strong statement. And I can't thank Doreen and everyone at BMI enough, because I think it felt like something broke in a good way. Like we broke through. She gave 15 minutes to us. They made a video. They talked about us and our work in the Alliance. We got 2 standing ovations, which is really amazing compared to what has gone on for the last 30 years I've been going. There was a feeling in the room like, okay, now things are going to get better. So we'll see. The Alliance is going strong. We have a lot of support now from the industry and from the PROs and from even the film schools. It's a good time. I think things could change. We'll see.
That's a beautiful thing.
It's an epic story.
And John Williams was there.
Well, I think it was a very interesting thing that BMI put us on the same night as John Williams, because they knew it would get a lot of press and it would get a lot of attention from everyone. And it was a big statement on their part. I think it was incredible. I think it will go a long way to helping move this issue forward.
Yeah.
So hope.
That's hope. That's hope. That's a good thing. I think that's a nice positive note to have in this conversation.
Well, definitely. And there were probably 3 to 4 women on the stage this year with shows, which is also quite different.
Yeah.
Usually there's one maybe, if that. So this is pretty exciting. Something I've learned is that when we all start out as musicians, it's very spiritual. We're very artistically oriented. We're passionate about it. And most people don't go, I want to make a lot of money. I'm going to be a musician. Most people are like, I got to do this all the time. And how can I pay for it? And what happens a lot is you just get crushed. And so one of the things I talk to young people about is it took me a long time to realize what my own needs are to keep me happy as an artist. I was looking for contentment, like to be working on things I care about and fulfilling myself artistically, emotionally, as a citizen of the world, And so I have found my answer, but it took me a long time. It was a very windy road. So one of the things I tell young people is think about yourself. Like I used to always make myself the least important part. Like I'll throw myself under the bus. I'll work 4 days and I won't sleep. I'll work on something. I'll let them abuse me because I'm scared to say anything. I'm scared to say that's impossible. I can't deliver it. It won't be good. I refuse to deliver something that isn't good. And so I'm not going to let you ruin my work. I'm going to do my best. And here's what I need to do it. And so I try to inform young people that they need to think about themselves as artists. What do they need to do their best work? What will make them content? Because when you're our age and you look back over your life, you don't want to go, what the hell did I do with my life? Why did I waste it? And I'm just a crushed person now. Like I actually look back and I go, wow, I really wouldn't change a thing. I mean, it was really interesting. It was always challenging. And I'm still intrigued by what I do. I'm still very passionate about what I do. And I'm learning how to make it be more, self-sustaining in terms of my other needs, And so you want to have a satisfied life. We only get one that we know of.
You came to music very early on. As you've indicated, you had some, convoluted ways to get to where.
Yes.
If you had an alternative career, what would that alternative career
I think
be?
I was heading towards journalism, investigative journalism, because I did that kind of research and I cared about those kind of stories. And in my film work, I love working on those kind of films. So like Dark Money, it's an investigative film, or Hunting Ground, many different, The Ghost of Abu Ghraib.
Oh my God, you've done so many great films. Hunting Ground it was so amazing.
Yeah.
So amazing.
I mean, my greatest thrill is when these go out into the world and have a big effect. And, I've been really lucky to, I mean, even Lost in La Mancha, about
yeah.
Terry Gilliam. And the saga
In the
continues now with his new film.
Yeah.
But it's been incredible to be part of those kinds of stories, or Ethel, Ethel Kennedy.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful score as well for Ethel. Yes. Got to thank you to all the media that makes my job easier as well. I get to listen and watch and do all of those things. So
it's so interesting when I talk to people that are journalists who are interviewing me and they know me already. And it's kind of interesting, like, wow, I never thought, it's interesting,
Well, I've been aware of you since the Vine Street Bar and Grill days, and as a producer and different things that you've done. So we're all in this world together,
keeping it interesting.
There it is. Is there a dream project you would like to work on? Because you produce as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've done a couple, like One Lucky Elephant.
Yes.
I also co-produced, and that was kind of a dream project for me. Lately, my mind is turning to the idea of musical theater. And I've done it before, and, I always joke, if you really don't want to make money, do musical theater. But I've got a couple of people that I'm involved in a couple of different possible projects where I might, I haven't been songwriting for a long time. I used to be a songwriter, and I was very able to convert my ideas into songs. And but I am intrigued by it, and so I'm looking at that, I also want to keep working on films, and I'm really interested in, environmental films. I did one called A Plastic Ocean, and that's having a tremendous impact. I mean, it's really been a great educational tool all over the world. I want to work on films about caring for our Mother Earth. I want to work on films about social justice. Those are all dream projects for me. And sometimes just straight up entertainment, once in a while.
Yeah. Would you like to do a narrative feature too?
If it's good.
Yeah.
And if the people are people I can relate to, I love collaborating with other artist to artist. And I find it difficult when corporations get in the middle. And so to me, I just like direct interaction. I've stayed pretty much in independent film and mostly independent documentary because I love the intimacy of the collaboration. I'm a total movie freak. I watch movies all the time, and I watch a lot of television. And I love good storytelling and interesting storytelling. So yeah, I'm completely open. I think it depends on who it is and what it is. Always. I'm very content driven.
Well, you are very open, and you are certainly very forthcoming with all of your answers and all of your discourse today. Gave us a lot to think about, a lot to watch, a lot to listen to. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's fun to talk about this stuff, especially with a person who knows so much about it. Music, film, whatever.
Well, that's part of the gig, and I like you, love collaboration. So that's why we do this. We love music people.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Miriam Cutler.
Thank you.
The occasion of our being here is the presence of 5-time Grammy Award-winning USA Fellow, composer, musician, many things, Terence Blanchard. Hey, Terence.
Hey, man. How's it going?
Good. I was going to call you a film composer, but you compose across a lot of mediums. You do films, you do concert pieces, you do for obviously your band, and also for operas now, too. So, composer it is.
It's been a journey. I was just having this conversation the other day with somebody, and we were talking about labels. And the thing that I kept thinking about was, I don't know what the label would be for me, because I used to call myself a jazz musician.
Yes.
Because that's what I did primarily. But now, I've been blessed to have the opportunity to do a bunch of different things.
Terence, one of the reasons you're very much in our focus right now is because of a film called BlackKkKlansman
Yes.
that you scored, and I had occasion to see it. I even brought my notes so you could see what it looks like when I write in the dark. It's an amazingly devastating and timely film, even though it's in a historical period. It's very timely to right now.
It is, in sort of a sad way. I'm a product of the 70s, so I remember that period of our history. And I remember once Jimmy Carter was elected, I remember thinking that a lot of that nonsense was behind us, as a country. And then lo and behold, the Reagan years started slowly bringing all of that stuff back into the fray. And now it's grown until this thing where we're being led by a guy who's actually a symptom of all that. And it's frightening because this was literally the country that was developed so people could have the freedom to speak their mind and worship who they wanted to worship and be who they wanted to be. And we have a small but very loud contingency of folks who are trying to make decisions for all. And for people who don't believe as they do, they create a lot of problems and issues. And it's unfortunate, because that's not the greatest part of what this country has been built on.
Yeah. BlackKkKlansman brings that home very, very much at the end when we kind of think we're almost home free with the end of the story. And then suddenly we're seeing footage of Charlottesville and all of that. The musical points of reference from the film, the obvious thing is how melodic the score is, that it's themes, and then those themes are developed. We hear those themes in different ways. And they're beautiful themes, and they're very much get-in-your-head themes, too.
Thank you. Well, that's how Spike, when I first started working with him, first thing he said was, you ever run into that person that seemed like they had that conversation a million times, and you're the millionth guy that's come in? So it was that kind of thing, he said, listen, man, I don't like underscoring. And I went, okay, just by the way you said that, there will never be underscoring in any film that I work on with you, And he told me, he said, I really love melodic scores. And I want people to walk away from the theater humming the themes. I want people to, when they're thinking about the movie, they hum the melody, or vice versa. If the melody pops into their head, they want to immediately associate it with the film. And that's what we've been about for years. And with BlackKkKlansman, I look at it as being the culmination of how we've been working together for over 20 years. And Spike has really developed a very unique cinematic style. As a composer, under his direction, we've developed this thing that is definitely a Spike Lee thing, and which is basically how the music takes on a narrative role in most of his films, and how the melodies themselves will cover, in an emotional way, scenes that could be really driven by rhythm, pulse, or energy in other ways. He shies against that. He really wants to have the emotional thing going on, even while some crazy stuff could be happening on screen. And it works to great effect for his style of movie.
The very first thing we hear in BlackKkKlansman is sort of homage to the Old South, like Wish I Was in the Land of Cotton kind of vibe, which is an interesting setup for it, because it kind of lulls the viewer as a film viewer into thinking maybe you're going to see something other than what it is you see.
Right. And I think for him, it's laying the foundation for where all of this stuff is coming from, to let you know how long this has been a part of certain people, of an American culture. And then we have the Alec Baldwin scene right after. And what I tried to do there musically was really take some of the harmonic progressions of the Dixieland period and not be like real on the nose with it, but have those colors play underneath that scene to make reference to that period, because it's always a rough scene for me to watch for a few reasons. When he uses the word mongrel in that scene and he points to this beautiful young African-American woman, it's a jarring thing for me being African-American, because I remember what that was, because it's amazing how Baldwin's character and myself could look at that woman and see two different things, because what I saw was an attention to detail, a sense of pride that, African American people have, to know that you are worthy of going to a school with anybody else, and the other idea of presenting yourself well, to let people know that you're just as worthy as anybody else. And it's frustrating to see that, knowing all of the effort and energy that went into that, only for somebody just to dismiss it so frivolously, as to say, mongrel. So it's little things like that throughout the entire movie, man, that for me shook me to my core when I saw it the first time.
I would assume that things begin with conversations with you and Spike. And what do those conversations sound like?
That's right, it's a podcast, so we're cool. No. I mean, they're very simple, man. I mean, the only reason why I laughed is because, one of the things I love about Spike, man, when, he has a very distinctive voice, but he always says your name and then his name when he calls you. You go, hello, he goes, Terence, Spike. And I go, like, there's anybody else with that voice in my life? Like, I didn't know who it was, But when we started talking about the film, we've been working together for a number of years. So, the conversation for this one was basically, he said, listen, I want an R&B band to be placed inside the score. And then he said, this is going to be Malcolm X all over again. He said, well, what haven't we featured? And I said, well, I'd like to use electric guitar, for this. And he said, cool. That was it.
Yeah.
And we went through our normal process of me creating, he gave me the script before he started shooting. And then once he started to edit, after he finished production, then I get the phone call of, are the juices flowing? Which means, send me some ideas. Yeah. And when I did that, after sitting down with the script and then one of the earlier cuts of the film, I just try to live with it and allow the film to talk to me and speak to me emotionally, and I'll just play and create these themes.
We note that you're also the orchestrator, also the conductor, and we also, as noted, you have your band plus like 75-piece orchestra. That's That's really interesting.
It's a beautiful thing. It's one of those things now. I still don't take it for granted. I think every chance we get to do something like that, man, I look at it as a true blessing, because it's an amazing, awesome thing to have 70 musicians who are extremely talented, who are willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill your vision of what it is that you're trying to do. And it's a very heroic thing in my mind.
You mentioned the electric guitar being featured so prominently. And yeah, absolutely. And then, I read one description of the score, and it said it went from kind of being more slower, subtler, and later on the theme, they said wacka wacka guitar and valiant horns. And I thought, I liked that. I thought that was pretty, wacka wacka guitar.
That's a new musical term.
I never.
I'm going to have to write that on a score one day, man.
Wacka wacka guitar.
Right here in bar 57, a wacka wacka guitar.
But I guess the thing is that instead of going for like strictly a period sound, something with flute or something like Curtis Mayfield reminiscent, you went a different direction with it.
Well, with like I said, going back to what I was talking about earlier, looking at the opening scene, seeing those afros, man, and the leather jackets and the bell bottoms and all of that stuff, I started thinking about Jimi Hendrix playing the national anthem.
Yeah.
And I remember, first of all, how radical that was to me, but radical in a way like that was very patriotic. To me, that was patriotism, because, by him playing the national anthem with that screaming, distorted guitar, he's telling you, we're Americans too. Women, people of color, all of the underrepresented groups, we're Americans too, who should be afforded all of the rights that everybody else has. And to me, that's what the film was speaking to. I think it's hard to put in the words, but that had to be the motivating drive behind a rookie cop getting involved and trying to infiltrate the Klan. Because think about it, he ran across an ad in the paper. Now, most African Americans who would see that would say, man, look at this. This is crazy. You see this? And pointed out, man, can you believe these dudes have an ad in the paper? And then it would be done at that, right?
Yeah.
Not this guy. Who's a rookie? I have to keep emphasizing that.
Yeah.
No, he called them. He called them and wanted to see what was going on and devised a plan to infiltrate the Klan with a partner. And to me, that's true patriotism as well, heroism, integrity of the highest order. So the guitar for me represents that yearning to be like everybody else.
We had a guest, Terence, named Miriam Cutler, who specializes in music for documentary films and very much films of conscious.
Okay.
And she was talking about earlier in her career as a female composer that they had an organization meeting for women composers, and it was a very small meeting, and now it could be a very large meeting. I think if we were going to have a meeting of African American composers, we could probably meet in the Prius.
Yeah, it would still be a small meeting.
It's a small meeting. I'm thinking you, Stanley,
and Marcus,
Stephen James Taylor.
Yeah. Marcus, we were hanging out one day, and Marcus made a joke about it. He said, hey, man, we can't hang out in the same room. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, man, if they blow this place up, there go 2/3 of the African-American film composers in Hollywood. So you need to leave the building. I was like, why? I got to leave. And it's true. And I ran into a young man last night. He's actually trying to start a group of African-American film composers because, it is important. I kind of think it's a rough thing to talk about, but I kind of think like not only composers, but other aspects of people in this business who are African American. We're kind of like, black doctors. There was when in the 70s when people started to see African American doctors in major hospitals. Even though those people were really qualified, people were accustomed to seeing something else. Because even now, man. I still have had people ask me if I could write for orchestra. Yeah, I mean, it still happens every now. It doesn't happen as much, but it still happens every now and then. It's truly frustrating. I've heard some of the most ludicrous reasons why people wouldn't hire me, and it has nothing to do with your talent, And that part of it's rough. But the thing about this business, it's not something that just happens to me. It happens to women. It happens to other people of color, Latino folks, all different type of people. Because, man, people come to anything with biases. The most important thing is to recognize those, We all have them. We all do, My kids call me on the carpet for stuff, and I try to look at myself as being the most liberal thinking person on the planet, man. I can't even remember what I said. I said something, man, and my daughter said, Daddy, that ain't cool. and I was like, but wait a minute, I didn't mean it like that. And no, this is me. And she goes, yeah, but that wasn't cool. Whenever I have things like that happen with my kids, it's a reminder to me, we all have these things. It's important for us to recognize it. The problem is not having the bias. That's not the problem at all. The problem is allowing the bias not to allow you to grow. That's the problem, I think. You see what's going on in Washington right now. It's incredible. It's incredible to see so many people turning back the hands of time. It's almost as if people are forgetting that there's a big world out there, and they're speaking to a specific group of people. And that, to me, has never been what this country is about, ever. Even George Bush went to a mosque, right? And I wasn't a George Bush supporter, but as a human being, even he understood, the need for restraint and to be open in your thinking and your response to things and to be responsible. Now, was he my favorite president? No. But just as a human being, I give him a lot of credit for that. Right now, some of the things that were said, some of the things that were said to Judge Sotomayor when she was being considered for the court, it's amazing to think that people still think that way these days, because there's so much information out there. There's been so much dialogue about these issues. You know, where are these people existing? What rock are they existing under? And how are they allowed to exist in such an isolated world? Because the truth of the matter is that growth is painful for everybody. Everybody. You know what I mean? There are things that I miss from my childhood, you know, but those days are gone. Yeah. And we have to accept the fact that we're constantly moving forward. My trumpet teacher used to always tell me something. He says, man, you're never standing still in this world, because while you think you're standing still, the rest of the world is moving forward. So when you think you're standing still, you're actually moving backward. And I think that's what has happened to a lot of folks. They haven't woken up to the fact that they were moving backwards. They still think that they are trying to uphold something that really doesn't exist anymore. But the thing that I have faith in this country is the fact that the majority of the people in this country know better. The problem with the majority is to get them out to vote. Yeah. That's the thing. But the majority of us know. That's why all of these guys fight for these voter right laws in all these different districts, because they know if there were large turnouts in those areas, you know, it'll be a different story. Well, actually, listen, she got 3 million more votes anyway. So that's a whole nother topic too.
Gotcha.
That's a different podcast.
I guess so. We got a couple stereophonic questions, if you would be so kind. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we know that you worked in a concerts format. We know you were done operas. Obviously, you do film and you do records. Is there a medium that you've not yet worked in that you would like to work, you know, in terms of your music?
Wow, that's a very good question. I haven't done dance yet. Dance kind of scares me, though. Well, opera scared me, so. But the things that I have been involved in, they've been so illuminating. Man, they've broadened my view of what music is. If the music has something to offer, people respond. And I don't care what it is.
If you didn't do music, is there something else that you would have a different kind of vocation? What would that be?
I'll probably be in sports some kind of way. I mean, maybe not as an athlete, but, you know, I've been in boxing for like over 20 years. One of the things that I love about the sport is the chess match that happens that most people don't really realize. And so that chess match in sports is the thing that I really love. Most people look at the physical attributes that most athletes will have, and they kind of marvel at that, because that's also amazing too. But it's not just the physical, it's also the mental thing that attracts me to sports. And it's very similar to music. It's very similar to jazz. It's about being creative. It's about once you learn your technique, then how do you utilize that to gain advantage over your opponent? Those are the things that I love about sports.
Terence Blanchard, what we love about you is everything that you share with us on Stereophonic.
Oh, man, thank you. It's been great being here.
Keep making it, man.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't have a choice.
You've been listening to Stereophonic, a regular podcast series with tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. We come to you from Datalight Studios in Los Angeles, California. Our show is produced and edited by Lindsay Tomasik. Our production manager is Kim Strand, and our theme music is by Dusty Gray. Please rate us on your favorite podcast platform, catch up with our past episodes, and visit us often for new shows. I'm your host, Dan Kimpel.